Everybody, check out MMA Junkie Podcast here with the host, Gorgeous George. It's twice a week, so make sure to check it out. Released every Monday and Thursday, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Audio Boom, and other streaming platforms. And also right on MMA Junkie website. And we always love having you on, George. And so I wanted to get your opinions before we get into the new year. UFC, of course, is going to be coming back no later than January 11th. We got a big fight card with Max Holloway, of course, Calvin Kattar. But I wanted to go back and review UFC Vegas 17, man, and just the changes that evolved throughout, leading up to the card and still put on a good show. The main event dropped, the co-main event stepped up. They had a great night. We had also the middleweight bout between Ian Heinisch and Kevin Gastelum. That fell out. Still, it didn't really affect it. Like, I just thought this was a strong card no matter what happened. They were able to put on a good show. How did you feel about it?
Yeah, man, I forgot about Gastelum and Heinisch. I remembered Edwards and Chimaev, obviously. I remember at one point they had 16 fights lined up, and I think they wound up with 12. So yes. The UFC has a tough task of trying to keep the fight cards decent and keep people busy, offer solid content, and they're doing it all at the last minute. In that regard, I applaud them. Talking about the fights, I kind of knew, and I'm mad at myself, that Wonder Boy versus Neal, I wouldn't call it easy money because that's offensive, honestly, to a guy of the level of Geoff Neal. I think he won 8 in a row to get to that, man. That's tough. I just knew that Wonder Boy is what we call a tough out and that Neal would not have an easy time with him. Now, that said, guys age, and at some point, you just stop being a tough out. Like Damian Maia was a tough out for a lot of people until people started working certain positions so that they didn't get mauled by his wrestling and his jiu-jitsu. And with Wonder Boy, I thought, 25-foot octagon versus 30-foot octagon, not as active. Neal, young blood, has the opportunity to view all those guys that have failed against against Thompson, including Woodley, who drew, in one of the fights. Masvidal, who lost to him. Even Till came this close to losing. I thought Neal could draw from some of that. His coaches weren't able to be there with him. He's had a rough year himself fighting for his life. I should have just stuck with my gut because I knew that Thompson would be very elusive. He's just not an easy target to hit. He's frustrating as hell. I was mad at. As I was watching the fight, I was like this. Fist at myself. Like if this computer was a mirror, I was mad at myself, man. And Thompson, I've gotten past being mad at him and his strategy because, hey, man, the guy walks out. Think about how scary that must be to face all them killers, but he's got a style where he doesn't get hit much. It's not most fan-friendly, and maybe that's why he hasn't really, I guess, registered at the box office. He's gotten a title shot, but I don't know, and I don't think he cares. Like I was saying the other day, he doesn't have fancy chains, doesn't have, a Lamborghini or nothing. He drives a school bus, Monday through Friday, just the most humble guy. It works for him, you know what I mean? So the main event was just the main event, but I couldn't be too pissed. I really enjoyed watching the great Jose Aldo versus Marlon Vera. Holy cow, man. Jose Aldo still has some of it. I don't know if he can be the guy that won all those fights, had 9 title defenses, but he still shows some of that flashes of brilliance, his speed, his leg kicks, a little bit of that. Marlon Vera, gutted for him because he moved to Southern California a few years ago, so we've gotten to know him pretty good. And it's kind of nice when one guy kind of leads the charge for his country, and he's put Ecuador on the map there, So those are my feelings on those 2 fights, at least.
Yeah, I thought that Aldo, I actually went on a hinge, and there was one I was leaning towards Vera. And kind of like the day before I went for Aldo, just something told me that Aldo was going to come out with a win. And, the last fight with Marlon Moraes, he didn't want to go out like that. Obviously he lost that fight, but many thought he won. So I feel he was going to come out more dominant. I feel like he was going to, rush things, but he was going to be the aggressor, and that clearly was the case, against Marlon Vera, who has, like you're saying, moved to Southern California. He's working with Jason Parillo. He's got, all the unnecessary tools to make a run at that 135-pound title. But Aldo, stopped him in that journey. And, moving forward, we know Aldo called out TJ Dillishaw. So that's intriguing fight as well. If that were to happen, I think that I could see that being like a number one contendership.
Well, Aldo's only 1-2 as a 35er, but he carries a lot of status. So if you beat Dillashaw, is that enough to get past Sandhagen? Now Sandhagen's got a difficult out as well. Frankie Edgar's, he's only had the one fight at bantamweight. He's 1-0, so he had a bad finish as a featherweight, I guess. But he came over to bantamweight and got that win over Munoz, if I'm not mistaken. 1-0 there. So I think Sandhagen is in the pole position. I think it's Sterling versus Jan, and Sandhagen, if he wins, especially if it's Jan, then I think he slides in. If it's Sterling, who knows? Because they just fought. But I think they would run it back. Something tells me the UFC likes Sandhagen. Garbrandt, is he committed still to going down to 125, or does he want to come back to 135? Who knows? I just think Garbrandt is very marketable. I think the UFC loves him. And I think he can railroad plans, Now, Dillashaw wants to come back to a title shot, but that's not going to happen. Cruz is out of the way. He had his title shot. So Cejudo's a wild card. He could always come back, and you never know there. So, man, that's tough. That's tough. If Aldo were to fight Dillashaw, would he become the number one contender? Probably not, man. I don't know why. I think he would still need one more because that would only make him 2-2. The Dillashaw skin would be nice, and then after that, So this is what I always tell fighters, Sean. Get on the same card as the champ. See if you can catch a bit of luck, If you can beat Dillashaw, then whenever fight Dillashaw on the same card as Sterling and Jan. But if you can get on the same card and you can get on that same timeline, you never know, man. Someone like Aldo could be in the right place at the right time if something falls out. Really, man, I swear this is the part that frustrates me the most. It's whatever the UFC decides, and there's no rhyme or reason, and they just grab Dana White, throw him out there, and go, say this, and he'll tell you, this is a number one versus a number two. We'd be fools not to put this together, and then if it's not a number one, number two, the fans wanted it, Come on, man. Yo Romero loses to Paulo Costa and he gets a shot at Izzy. That makes no sense. Like, you see what I'm saying? So to try and figure out the UFC is a waste of time. Right. You just want to be ready, and I think you want to be relevant and in the same way time span as the champ.
Yeah, definitely. It makes sense. And I thought Aldo, fought a good fight as well, He's able to mix in that wrestling. He's, bringing a little bit more every time he goes back in that cage.
That back take was nice.
Yes.
Like, he was like locked in, man, like an anaconda on him. He wouldn't let him go like a python. Who are the ones that squeeze? The pythons?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Like one of those then, or a boa constrictor, I don't know. But whatever snake it is that love, I mean, I'm sure they all love to get their squeeze on, but there's one in particular that'll squeeze your guts out. I've seen them, man. I watch that National Geographic, and every once in a while a snake will tangle with a gator, and you're thinking, or a crocodile, and you're thinking, oh, come on, man, that crocodile just needs to bite him, and it's over. But the snake is crafty.
Definitely. And Marlon Vera, where do you see heads after this one?
That's a good question. I would like him to get somebody coming off a loss. I like it when guys coming off wins pair up, guys coming off losses pair up. It just makes it an easier puzzle to figure out. But Vera, that's a good question. I mean, for one, if I'm not mistaken, he's had a pretty busy year. I'd love for him to just get better, Right. Take 6 months off, use 3 of those months to relax, decompress, but also address things, like tighten up your jiu-jitsu game, tighten up your boxing, tighten up your wrestling, whatever. Maybe even 4 months of that. And then use those last 2 months for your camp, for whoever it is you're preparing for. Sometimes when you fight frequently, it's a great idea because you, like a Kevin Holland, all of a sudden, boom, you're in the top 10. People are putting you in some big pivotal fights. But at the same time, are you getting better, or is your mind always occupied on making weight and staying healthy and fight plans, So I'd like for Vera to probably come back like in June or July and, I don't know, maybe run it back with Yadong or maybe catch another one of these veterans, that's coming off a loss. Like, for example, Cruz versus Casey Kenny, that's huge for him, man. Yeah. To get Dominic Cruz to go, all right, I'll fight Casey Kenny. Maybe Vera can get catch somebody that would help him out.
Yeah, so talk about obviously when we look back at Geoff Neal, we look back at Wonder Boy. Wonder Boy is calling out Masvidal for a rematch. You think that makes sense for him at this point? Like you said, he's not really in it to win the belt, right? So
I like the spin of nice MF versus BMF, but he beat Masvidal. So what is he trying to do? I mean, I guess just catch on to Masvidal's popularity, maybe. I think he wouldn't be as worried about, getting taken down. It'd be another striker. I just think Masvidal and Colby has to happen. And if it doesn't, then I imagine Masvidal's just going to fight someone that gets him back in there against Usman, I suppose. Mm-hmm. I mean, I still can't believe the UFC hasn't booked Edwards versus Masvidal because they had that run-in. I think you could build that one up, but who knows? Who knows if Masvidal wants to tangle with him? I think Masvidal, rightfully so, just feels like he's up here, and he's not going to grant just anybody an opportunity to live off his name. I think he's going to be a little stubborn because people made it hard for him to get over. Now that he's over, I don't know that he wants to help others get over, But look, I mean, if they book Wonder Boy versus Masvidal, sure, I'll watch. I always say that, but I just don't think it makes too much sense.
I think that makes sense for Wonder Boy. Obviously, for him, the title's not a big deal. Would you see like Wonder Boy taking on maybe like Magny in a fight? Because Magny's still waiting for an opponent as well, so maybe they could book that.
Yeah, that could work. They both paid their dues. They've been around, so they seem easy to work with, I think. So, if you were to tell me, it just broke like 30 minutes ago, I'd be like, oh, okay. I'm not excited about it personally. Wonder Boy and Magny are enough to stomach in terms of a fan, just in their style. They're very dominant in their styles and what they want to do, but I don't necessarily want to. Well, hold on a second, Sean. Rather than them throttling two other guys, they can play a game of chess against each other. Maybe, I suppose. I don't know. But I still think I'd rather see Magny versus Chimaev. He wanted Chimaev, too. Nobody wanted Chimaev. And then I'd rather see Wonder Boy versus Edwards. Two guys that want to stand and bang and two guys that want to,
True. That's true. And then we can't skip Anthony Pettis and his showing at 170 against Alex Morono. And I was impressed.
Fighting for his job. He lost round 1. In both rounds 2 and 3, there was moments where you were like, because all Morono had to do was lock up one of those other 2 rounds. The fight probably was going to go to a decision either way. Morono won, but I don't think Pettis expected Morono to be that tough on the ground. But look, when you move up to 170, you're sacrificing a little bit too. You might have the greatest technique in the world, but still, that was an important win for him. I think it'll keep him with the company. I think he still wants to be with the company. Younger brother's over at Bellator, and he speaks well of Bellator, but still, the younger brother didn't accomplish what Anthony did. Anthony was a WEC champ and a UFC champ. So I just think he belongs there, and I think he's earned the right to negotiate with Dana White directly. Whether you bring your manager or not, I just think you walk into Dana White's office and say, well, you call or you text them and you go, I need 15 minutes. I think Dana White would give it to him, and you just put it out there. Bro, I've been with you guys for 15 years. When you throw in the WEC and the UFC, I've been there when you needed me. I was your champ. I was the Wheaties guy. I was one of the Reebok guys. Let's go, bro. I think I've earned my spot. I've spilled a lot of blood. The Poirier fights, Ferguson fights. Come on, dog. What are we arguing for? What are we arguing about? 50 grand, 100 grand? I mean, these guys are negotiating like 200, 250, 280, 300, whatever. Somewhere in that range. It's not like when you hear Dak Prescott wants $40 million a year and the Cowboys want to give him $30 million a year. It's like, whoa, that's $10 million a year. That's a lot. But these fight purses, I don't think they're not at that level, where unless they're fighting for titles where they're arguing over millions. So I think that's where, as a good company, you keep those guys.
That's true. And Anthony Pettis has also been on some of the biggest cards in UFC history as well.
Yeah, and he's been a coach of the Ultimate Fighter. He's never has Anthony Pettis ever embarrassed your company? I don't think so. I mean, I don't have the greatest memory, but I don't remember cracking the paper or looking on Junkie and saying, "Oh man, what did he do that for?" I don't remember any of that stuff. So, and he's half Puerto Rican. The UFC wants to make a splash into Puerto Rico. They want to create a PI there. I'm not saying, I want him to work the front desk or anything, but I'm just saying there's a couple of those guys that can become very useful for your company.
Yeah, I definitely see a good future for Anthony Pettis. Moving forward, like you said, maybe he could transition to office position. Once he's done with his fights. Obviously, I don't know how many fights he have left.
49 in April, the one that was going to be headlined by Habib and Tony, the pandemic one. If I'm not mistaken, I could have sworn that one was, I think it wound up being 3 title fights. It was really stacked. And I remember for no reason whatsoever, I saw Pettis versus Cowboy, right?
Yes.
And I was like, what the hell for? They fought already. Why do we need them? But then I realized the UFC was trying to make the biggest splash possible because every sport was shut down. They're going to be the only one that was functioning. So let's get some star power in there. Let's get Cowboy and Pettis along with these 3 title fights, along with all those other killers. Let's get them in there. That's what guys like that mean to the company. You know what I mean? So that's why I'm big on them re-signing them.
Yeah, I'm still baffled with when you mentioned Cowboy Cerrone because the fact that how much he got paid was very little for that Conor McGregor fight compared to like CM Punk, what he commanded. He commanded $500,000 and Cerrone only got $200,000, which is crazy.
Yeah, I don't remember the salary. What was the salary for Cowboy? Do you remember?
$200K to win and $200K to show, and CM Punk got $500K flat.
That is a damn shame, but yeah. I think you're not going to get it back at the gate with CM Punk.
Yeah,
I think you're going to get it in pay-per-views. Actually, you might a little bit in pay-per-views.
The first time they did.
I think what he brings to the table is just eyeballs, first-time eyeballs, and then they hope to keep some of those eyeballs, And I think that's why they took a chance with James Toney. They took a chance with CM Punk. I don't know that we'll, Clarissa Shields. I'm sure at some point we're going to see her. I mean, she's over at PFL, but I think if the experiment goes well, she'll probably come over to the UFC. So we'll see, man. It can make my blood boil thinking just how much the pay doesn't seem right, Who knows, man? Maybe it's just what you negotiate. You know what I mean? I'm not convinced that our current crop of managers are all from top to bottom. Not necessarily qualified, but just as good as they can be. I think they try like hell, and I think a lot of them have made a lot of progress that you just have to play hardball, I don't even know that they have as much negotiating leverage as they think. Like I hear about this MMAFA or something and the progress they made with that lawsuit, and I understand the frustration of Kung Lee and John Fitch and the others, and they want to negotiate purses, like in boxing,
right.
Not be tied down, get paid better. I get that, man. But at the same time, the sport doesn't miss these guys when they leave. And so when you talk about supply and demand, that's why the UFC doesn't really have pony up if they don't want to. Because if you go, oh, yeah, well, then I'm going to leave. They just kind of go, okay, see ya. You know what I mean? And we just lost Rumble and Yoel Romero off the UFC roster. That sucks. As a fan and media, that sucks. But guess what? These fight cards that are starting to come together in early 2000 already look pretty good. And Dana White Contender Series has a crop of fighters coming over. And it's a locomotive that's going downhill and nothing can stop it. That's what makes the UFC pretty incredible, the way they can tap and find, stars or whatever and just keep people entertained.
Yeah, it's even surprising that they're going to bring back Ultimate Fighter.
I don't like Ultimate Fighter, honestly. I'm all about Dana White Contender Series now.
Yeah.
I'll watch it.
I mean,
they spared us the last 2-3 years from it. I just, it's the same stuff. Somebody cries, he wants to go home. It's been a rough time. He's homesick. Somebody misses weight and gets yelled at and scolded, almost sent home. A couple people almost get into it at the house. Okay, I kind of like that because I like the drama. Somebody that was very promising will be out due to injury, but Dana White will promise him a spot in the final. And I don't know, man. I'd just rather get it over with in one night. 5 fights, one night, and then Dana goes, you're in, you're out, you're in, you're out. Cool. Some go to LFA, some go to Titan, some go to CFFC. The others we see on the UFC card. Some hang back and wait for the UFC to call them anyway. I like that.
Yeah. This season will feature middleweight and bantamweight tournaments, and the coaches haven't been announced yet. And I think if you think about it, it's the nostalgia factor that the Ultimate Fighter had been running for so long, and then that's what had given birth, when we go back, we look at the Forrest Griffin, Stephen Bonner, that we credit that. I think UFC feels like they credit that heavily for their success. So they kind of want to, keep it alive as much as they can. But obviously, if there isn't a audience for it, it won't be aired.
Yeah, look, it worked out, man. It worked out. They got Rashad, they got Bisping, they got Dillashaw. A lot of champions came from. I mean, not a ton, but they got some champions from the Ultimate Fighter. They got a lot of duds as well. And then they got a lot of fighters that wound up being part of the roster. And it works out. That's not any different from just putting on, like in the old days, Access TV or now UFC Fight Pass, and just watching the top talent in these organizations, throwing Cage Warriors overseas and a few of the others. You can recognize pretty big names, and you sign them. You sign them when they're done there. It's not like those contracts are that oppressive. LFA, most of them will let you go pretty easily. I think only King of the Cage might ask for a little fee or something like that, but for the most part,
never get that.
It's like soccer. It's like, hey, you want my player? Okay, you got to pay the transfer fee. I think MFC used to do it with.
Right.
What was that guy from Croatia's name? Do you remember the guy from MFC? Spacing his name right now. He owes me a 12-pack of Heineken.
Okay.
What was his name? No, not Milicic. Gonna bug me. You keep talking. I'm gonna look it up. Hold on a second.
Yeah, I mean, it is one of those things. Like with the Ultimate Fighter, we're just going to be seeing kind of like a retread. While Contender Series, you hear each individual story. It's more like it's on the line right here. We don't have to wait, several weeks. You don't have to wait, see your favorite fighter fight. He has a certain date, a certain time he's going to fight. And I just think that builds up the anticipation more, than rather than you have to wait out the whole season to see your guy fight. And a lot of the fans and community that supports the fighters, they have to tune in every week, not even knowing until their fighter gets scheduled. That's what I see. If I was in a gym and I trained with so-and-so and he's on the Ultimate Fighter, well, now I got to wait potentially 10 weeks to see him fight, his first fight, whatever it is, 6-8 weeks. Whether it's Contender Series, we know he has a date, he has a time, he's going to be fighting 1 month. We know exactly what it is. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Unless COVID or something else gets in the way,
Plus, it's a full fight card, man. On the Ultimate Fighter, we wait a whole week for a 2-round fight.
I know.
And over here, we get 5 fights in one night. I mean, granted, it's a 10-week run, and then we don't see you for another 42 weeks. That's just my preference. If they were to tell me, hey, look, dog, the Ultimate Fighter is only once every couple of years, then I'd probably say, oh, okay, let's do it and get it over with. But when they were doing it twice a year, I just didn't have much interest. The guy's name was Mark Pavlich. He owes me a 12-pack. We bet Brazil versus Croatia in 2014 or hell, maybe even the 2010 World Cup. Croatia and Brazil were matching up. Hey, look at who MFC had back in the day. You want to hear some of their names?
Sure.
The late Ryan Jimmo, Tom Kong Watson, Douglas Lima, Jason McDonald, Chalice Latis, Jay Silva, Trevor Prangley, Paul Daly. Pretty decent name.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, great talent that came through there.
Guess what, Sean? You remember, right? They used to use the ring, kind of like Affliction, with a white canvas instead of the cage. And for the fan, that's viewing pleasure. I'm not a fan of the cage watching from home as much as I am when I'm in person as much as I was the ropes. I really, really like the ropes, but I think the cage was I think it was the more carnal setting for what these guys were trying to do, an actual fight.
True.
Closure, you know what I mean? So.
Yeah, I know one of those other promotions, they currently do it. M1 Global. They currently they actually have American shows, and they actually use the ring too.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I just think the UFC, they built their whole brand around the cage. So I think that's where a lot of MMA enthusiasts or they're really into the actual cage. So but obviously a fight can happen anywhere. Right? You can have it in a cage, you can have it in a pit, as we've seen before, and it can happen.
Yeah, it's too late for them to turn back the clock. The octagon is trademarked. That's just where it's going to go down. You know what I mean? The only difference is when they use 25 feet or 30 feet. Pay-per-views seem to always be in 30 feet octagons, and the Apex houses the 25, and a lot of fight nights are in the 25. frankly, I like the 25. It's 33% less real estate. The numbers show more finishes. You know, I know Dana White's been asked about it, and he'll say that's not true, and then he'll point to a card where it didn't happen. But if you take the history of both cages, there are more finishes in the smaller cage. And I think that it's the same dimensions as the WEC, too. WEC used to have a lot of action, man.
Yeah, I know that Dana said that he's looking to come back to Tachi Palace because that's what they were supposed to hold pay-per-view. So I would assume that would be the small cage. Tachi Palace only holds 300 people or something like that. Not even that many.
I went there once, man. It's a good crowd, man. That crowd was awesome in Lemoore, California. They really love their fighting there on that reservation. They used, if I'm not mistaken, it was a square cage. It was pretty unique, actually. I saw Bellator there once, too. So I saw a Tachi Palace card, but I also saw a Bellator card there. Dana White is going to go back. He'll go back with an octagon, but he'll go back. He wants to do that solid for them because they were there for him when he was trying to get that UFC card done in Cali, and then it got shut down by the governor. The governor and the senator, Feinstein and Newsom, put pressure on ESPN, the head honchos over at Disney.
Yeah, that's true. But Dana still got it done anyway, like he said. It was done, basically.
He got it done in Jacksonville. He piggybacked off of the WWE and the pressure that Linda McMahon, she was able to get some stuff done with Governor DeSantis in Florida. So WWE paved the way there. Dana White was able to follow suit and go to that state. That little scathing video that Dana did on against the media and all that, I felt like there was a few details that were missed there. He did do a lot. He did persevere, and when one door closed, another one opened, blah, blah, blah. But I don't think the media was doing anything wrong other than saying, just making sure that this was the right move. I mean, the whole world shut down. All the sports in the United States and the whole world shut down for a reason. And this was something that, the fighters may be safe and all that, but it can spread. You can bring it home. You know what I mean? And I said it the other day on Spinning Back Click. It was a novel virus. We were trying to figure it out as things were unfolding.
That's true. Moving forward, like when you go back and look at the fight night, we also had fun performances. Michelle Pereira and Chaos Williams. That was unanimous decision. I had picked that one correct as well. Those were good fights. I mean, that was a good fight. For Michelle Pereira, just an unorthodox striker with that capoeira style. How do you feel he's going to fit into 170? Like, does this guy, you think, can climb the ranks using what he has, or does he have to add to that arsenal?
I thought that was going to be two human highlight films colliding, and I thought we were going to get ourselves a possible end-of-the-year highlight KO candidate, for KO of the year. I just messed all that up, but you know what I'm trying to say. Right. Both guys are two very athletic guys, a lot of power, and I was on the edge of my seat. That moment never came. They still threw hard. It was still cool to watch. I don't know. I still think they're finding their way. I think Pereira has either 7 or 11 losses. He's not what everyone thinks just yet. Maybe he can become that with some good work and some polishing because he's very athletic. Yeah. And very dangerous, and then Chaos Williams, I think, was like 8-0. This is his first loss. So it's still early. It's still early in both guys' career. But, man, I love the promise. I think those guys are amazing athletes. But they're in a division, bro, where you can't even begin to think about them right now. With that, not when you got Leon Edwards and Geoff Neal and Santiago Ponzinibbio's coming back. Vicente Luque, you know what I mean? These are just the guys that trail the Masvidals, the Woodleys, the Covingtons, the Usmans of the world, those guys. These are the guys that are, coming in another wave, per se. And what if Kevin Holland drops the welterweight? He swears he can do it. Holy cow. But 170 stacked, I'd just like to see both guys continue to perform and get better and maybe get on some sort of a run. But I'm not as excited yet as them as title contenders. I still see some holes.
Definitely. When we look back also, Rob Font with a big first round. This is the only fight I got wrong on the main card. I had Marlon Moraes. Rob Font was, what can you say, man? That guy has really stepped it up, taking on the former number one contender. This was a brutal finish, you know what I mean? Like, I felt like, why didn't they stop it? They could have stopped it before. You just can't help but think that. But I don't know if the referee was trying to give more respect to Marlon Moraes. if he felt that Marlon was still in that fight. So how did you feel about that knockout? Not only the knockout, but the call of the referee.
For one, I'm very happy for Rob Font because every time he's come up against the top guys in the division, it hasn't worked out for him. And this one finally puts him over, and he went way to the top. Marlon Moraes has been a top 10 guy for about a decade, a top 5 guy the last 5 years, a former champion with, a major belt in his WSOF run. And it was a first round stoppage. There is no judges controversy and how'd you score it or anything like that. He handled his business. Now, I thought he was in a little bit of trouble on the ground, but I also was wondering why Marlon was there because Marlon's a dangerous striker, I guess he just wanted to mix it up. Who knows? Once he touched him, he was very accurate and he was able to finish him. And Moraes now I think he's been stopped 3 times. Cejudo, Rob Font, and then was it Sandhagen? I think was the last one. I can't remember, but that's 3 losses that he's taken. He's only 32 years old. I'd love for him to take those 6 months off as well. Reload a little bit, you know what I mean? Refresh himself. Now that he's not a top contender, he can still make a run, but you got to be a little bit more calculated, you know what I mean? And definitely, I feel like his strengths are with his hands, his kickboxing. So to see him go to the ground first, I'm not sure I agree with that, but whatever. Let's concentrate on Rob Font. Huge win for him. He calls out Dillashaw. The only problem is Jose Aldo called him out, about an hour later. Aldo's got the type of clout that I think Dillashaw will want. Dillashaw is going to want a big name. Dillashaw wants to come into a title shot. He's not going to do it. So I think he's going to have to settle for a big name, and I think Aldo's it.
The last fight was, that we didn't talk about, obviously, was the big fight between Greg Hardy in the heavyweight division and Marcin Tybura. Tybura finished him. I felt like that was going to happen. I actually picked Tybura to win this fight. How did you feel about that performance? And who does he fight next?
I did want to say one last thing.
Okay.
I don't think Rob Font is going to get Dillashaw. I think Jose Aldo will get him. But I'm hoping he gets somebody like if Garbrandt does go back to 35, like a Garbrandt, or maybe any mix of Rivera, a Sunsao, one of those cats. I know a few of those guys are booked, but a veteran that can give him a chance. But he did just take out the number 5 guy in the USA Today sports ranking, so who knows? Sandhagen has Edgar. Jan's got Sterling. A few of the guys are already, like I say, pretty busy. I still love the call out by Rob Font. Either way, good for him. I'm super happy. Tybura, he had won like 4 or 5 in a row. Then I think he lost 3 or 4 in a row. I thought he was probably on the verge of a cut. Now I think I took another look and he's won another 4 in a row. So he beat Greg Hardy. And until Greg Hardy has more fights, we won't know if that was really a big win. We think. I mean, he's got promise. At the same time, it's all how you spin it. I can sit here and go, well, what has Hardy done? It's not really that big of a win to beat him. And I might be right, especially if Hardy loses the next couple and that's it. I didn't like the way Hardy went out. I didn't think he was in extreme danger like that to just cover up and absolutely do zero about it. I was waiting for him to turn around, start to get up, anything, man, anything. He just kind of turtled and signaled the end. As far as Tybura is concerned, whoever just happens to be available for him to continue his rise. He's already mixed it up with some big names. He's actually got quite a few UFC fights. So he'll, I don't know off the top of my head, maybe Blagoy Ivanov or one of those guys that's hanging, Olenek or someone, one of those guys that hangs out in the 10 to 15 range. Maybe JDS. Hey, look, JDS, you want one more fight? All right, fight to war. Let's see how that goes. Maybe a Tai Tuivasa. If we start from the top, Miocic has Ngannou. I don't know when that one's going to get signed, but you got to that those guys are next. Blades is just kind of hanging out. He needs Ngannou to lose because otherwise he's always going to be behind Ngannou because of the 2 losses. I think they're going to rebook him versus Derek Lewis. So that's good. Yeah. That's 2 more out of the way. And then after that, I think I saw Volkov get booked, Reams booked. So we'll see. It seems like the top 8 guys are kind of already taken. Maybe an Arlovsky. I feel like Tabura's fought a lot of these guys already, though. A Walt Harris. I don't know. You can't go wrong with mixing it up in that 8 to 16 range, even if it's a repeat fight. If you want to stay busy, I think the UFC will pay you. They want to fill up a lot of these cards. Not all of their talent's not available still to them, so that's why you're seeing a lot of repeat names.
Definitely. And I had to mention the man I think is my favorite personally who won Contender Series this year, and he has the only finish on the undercard, the prelims, and that's Jimmy Flick. And so what did you think about that crazy finish? I mean, that fight with Durden, that just went quick. You know what I'm saying? Like they were going after it right away, and he was hurt early on. And somehow Jimmy Flick was able to get that perfect submission in, did that triangle choke, and like it was like inverted triangle choke, if I'm not mistaken, and very impressive by him.
You're right. Contender Series to here. That's a good win or a good back-to-back. Durden around town was like a plus 140 underdog, and a lot of sharps I talked to were liking Durden as the underdog that's going to cash. I was on Durden, but I remember seeing Flick on Contenders. I wasn't as convinced. I mean, I didn't really break that fight down too much pre-fight or anything like that. I just figured I would watch it, but when a lot of sharps were on it, I noticed it. So I think I may have just thrown him in on a parlay. Durden did. So Flick broke that up kind of early. The submission was nice. Now he's already looking to tangle with some big names as well, you know. So flyweight is one of those divisions where you can do that because there can't be more than 25 of them, 20 or 25 of them, you know what I mean? And only 10 of them are very well known. So you can make your way up quickly. A 3 fight win streak in the flyweight division, and you're relevant as you know what? Yeah, just keep fighting and keep doing your thing. And I bet you Jimmy Flick will be, you know, like in that position where Marino and Royval and Perez found themselves in, you know, right there, man, right at the cusp.
Yeah, definitely. And then also they had a fighter that stepped in to be the replacement for the last title fight between Figueiredo and Moreno. Do you know anything about him? I know he comes from another promotion. I think it's from ONE FC.
They had somebody there weigh in as insurance. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, they did. I don't know if you knew about that. He came in.
His name?
I'm trying to figure it out now.
One of my guys on Junkie said that, and I heard it. It went in one ear and out the other, and I was like, oh, mental note. I got to look up.
Right. I was curious as well.
Yeah, and then I forgot to follow up on it. It's I don't know if it's a one championship name, but I think it was a name that I recognize. I can't believe that they would do that, though. Let me think here. If Royval lost to Marino and Perez was out of the way,
all right.
Benavidez has had his shots. Shout out to Joseph. He just lost his brother. I don't know if you know that, but I saw that on social media. Las Cruces, New Mexico. That's got to be incredibly difficult. Your younger brother, man, I can't imagine that.
Of course.
During the holidays, of course, any day of the year that would be terrible. But geez, man. Okay, so you know, but then your Pantojas, your Formiga got cut. So I suppose, yeah, I guess now that I think about it, Bontarin, or I forget, there's a few of the other guys there. I think I do remember hearing about that. Yeah, I wouldn't have been too thrilled. I mean, I get it. With 3 weeks turnaround, the UFC was looking for a little bit of insurance. But I think if that fight just doesn't happen, you just don't do it, you know? And if it's a pay-per-view, then you make it a non-pay-per-view. I don't know what to tell you. The UFC's done that before, where they made a pay-per-view just free on ESPN, and that's that. It's probably a lot more complicated than just snapping your fingers, I imagine, you know, especially when you're in bed with ESPN. You know, about 30 minutes ago, we were talking about that wonderful card that had 3 title fights and Pettis and Cowboy and some other big matches. So sometimes you win one, sometimes you lose one on the pay-per-views. But it didn't happen, but I'm going to see if as soon as we're done, I'll Google it and see, and I'll text you that name. It's eating at me. I want to know too.
Yeah. I remember that. It was like a bit of news that wasn't even made like major, but it was a guy who was either undefeated or he had a really great record, maybe minimal losses, and then they said he was going to be the replacement. I was like, why are they bringing someone else in when they have other fighters that could do that? But obviously UFC, you know, they make their play, you know.
Kind of weird, right?
Policy. Right.
Does it sit well with you? Like, would you have even wanted to see that guy step in? Are you really going, yes? I don't know. I really wanted to see Figueiredo fight Marino, and I really wanted to see Marino fight Figueiredo. I wanted to see them with proper camps, but I'll do it with the 3-week camp. But in the end, I don't know that I just want to see Figueiredo defend against anybody. And I don't want to see Marino just fight anybody because I wanted to see him fight Figueiredo. So I don't know that it would have sat well with me, but I'm kind of a picky bastard.
Right. Definitely. And you know, obviously UFC Fight Night is you know, that's the last event of 2020. So what a crazy year, George, that we endured. But as MMA fans, I think we came out, you know, on top because we had so many great fights. We had the huge knockout with Joaquin Buckley that made waves. You know, obviously ESPN was trending. You know, obviously the title fight with Habib and Gaethje was huge. The title fight between Tony and Gaethje was huge. So if you could summarize 2020 for the UFC in particular, but as the sport of MMA, how would you summarize it?
2020 was just It's a year that we'll never replicate. You know what I mean? We all went through a lot, honestly, including you and I. Anybody that touches MMA in any way, even if we're not just one of the big branches, you know, that the big names in the sport are, or the tree trunk that's Dana White and Scott Coker and whatever, and all the people that, you know, make big moves. We're a part of it. And we went through a lot. Scary. You know, I think McGregor was one of the first to curse out COVID-19. I think he lost an aunt early on, either March or April. I remember him just really, really emotional. He lost a relative to the coronavirus. Habib's village got ravaged. A lot of people got infected with coronavirus, and in the end, it took his father's life. Ghost and I also had a lot of infections in our family, and we had a relative pass away. It touched us as well. The 2 gyms in Vegas were shut down. When the UFC came back from Fight Island the second time, they were shut down. It hit Vegas hard, the same way it's hit the whole world hard, whether you call it a second wave or we're just on an upkick or whatever. Luckily, I guess we've had no fighters pass away. I know some of them have had some long-lasting effects that a lot of them are getting over. They're keeping private. I would say most of us are through it now. I commend the UFC for them pushing forward the way they did. And then eventually Bellator joined the party like in August or September. PFL, unfortunately, you know, they lost their season, and all these other promotions are just doing it with no fans. We're figuring it out, man. As far as the action itself, I felt like there was an early drop off. Like in April or May, I was watching fights and I was going, a little rusty, you know, a little slow. But I think it may have been in my head, bro. I don't know. I mean, there was some great fights this year. No champions in the UFC, at least, lost their titles. Blachowicz stepped in and won a vacant. Jan stepped in and won a vacant. But no UFC incumbent champions lost. Like I say, it's just, I don't know that we'll ever replicate this year. But I still think we got our fair share of great submissions, great KOs, great storylines, great fill-in stories. New stars were made. Old fighters some are retiring or moving on. You know, it's not just the UFC and MMA. It's all sports. I think we could say that about all sports. You know, the Dodgers hadn't won a World Series in almost 30 years, I think, or over 30 years, 32 years. But they still put together a version of the World Series, and they should still get credit for it. The Lakers, the same thing, you know. They were playing in bubbles with no fans, no home court advantages or nothing like that. But still, I still felt like I saw top-level athleticism in a lot of sports. So for that, I'm grateful. I think sports kept a lot of us sane.
Yeah, I think so as well. And, you know, we're looking forward, of course, the next time when we have UFC with Holloway and Catter. So we appreciate you again, Gorgeous George, for being on the Fightlete Report.
Thank you, Sean.
Happy New Year. And
I hope we have a lot of appreciation for when we do get it all back, when we have the big press conferences and the big weigh-ins and the big fights with filled arenas and possibly stadiums and high fives and fist bumps and bro hugs. You know what I mean? Full on hugs. I want to start like shaking somebody's hand again or something like that, and just kind of being up close, or you know what I mean? Like everything's such a distance, everything's so cold, and now that hopefully we're all going to be safe, I believe, with these vaccines, and I think the virus will be in our rearview mirror probably halfway through the year. I can't wait for 2021. I think we did take steps backward with humanity, with our country or whatever, but I think we're going to push forward and we're all going to come together, and it's going to be great days that await us. But you said it, Cater, Max Holloway, Sandhagen, Edgar, McGregor, Poirier, great fights await us, but it's still like it is now. No fans. We're just going to have to power through it, figure it out, and we need to get through it.
Definitely, man. I like, you see, like the show behind me, the poster is when they came to Chicago. UFC is one of my favorites with Dillishaw, Barao. And if you watch the show, like, you talk about shaking hands and all that, right? Fist bumping. I think I was the first person TJ Dillishaw swiped his hand to as he came out.
Is that when he won the title or defended the title?
He defended the title.
Okay, that's awesome. When he won the title, when he won the title, I was down about $1,000. I remember I was basically gonna owe my bookie about $1,000, and I remember going, what? I think Dillashaw was 10-1 or something like that. Or maybe the parlay I put him in was 10-1, but I needed him, man. And when he beat Barral, I was like, wow. I'm not going to even pretend like I won money. I just broke even, which felt like a win. But I remember it was during a junkie gathering, and we were all at a Mexican restaurant outside of the Monte Carlo. Now it's called the Park Hotel. But boy, man, I was so happy. But that's one of those where I needed him, man. Otherwise, I was gonna hand over an envelope.
I hear you, man. Yeah, so like if you go back and watch that fight, you'll probably see my hand there. And that's like what you're saying, bringing back the fans, and I'm really looking forward to when UFC does come back, like for their first event. If they do it in Vegas, I'm definitely aboard to go. So
yeah,
you'll
man,
see me there.
I can't wait, because here's another thing that bugs me is that mask. Like, I wear it. It doesn't bug me to wear it, but what I don't like is if I see you, if you're walking up to my studio at Mandalay Bay, you're usually smiling, and that smiling is telling me, hey, I'm here. I'm happy to see you. In 10 to 20 steps, I'm going to high five you or give you a hug or whatever. That's communication. But if I'm blocking this, if all you're seeing is this,
I know exactly.
Like all that's taken away. We honestly look like bandits. You know how bandits, they cover up their face when they rob a bank or whatever, and all you can see is their eyes, and you don't know who's under there or whatever. It's just a big mystery, and it gets old, bro. It really gets old. I like to see people smile, or I like to see people make a face like, a funny face or anything, like some sort of human interaction. But when everyone's just covered up, man, it just drives me nuts. So I need normalcy. I need us to get back there. I'm shooting for March Madness of 2021. I think that's a bit optimistic, but for sure by summer, man, I would love for International Fight Week to just be back to normal.
Oh yeah, same here. And on that note, I actually transferred for where I was working from night shift to day shift. So I had to get used to meeting new people and not knowing what the bottom half of their face looked like. It took me a while to see everybody without their masks.
Really?
So that's because I was a totally new department, and I didn't know anybody except for like maybe one person. So it's just like it took you a while to see everybody without their mask. If they were eating lunch or.
You ever watch those movies when they got those, like if it's an older movie and it's a masquerade party and they're all looking around, and that's what it feels like, man. Something eerie, something like 2 centuries ago, what we're living right now.
I agree. Well, George, I appreciate you again. Happy holidays, safe.
All right.
And
happy holidays, for sure. Christmas, whatever you celebrate, man. I hope you are, with loved ones, keep the numbers down, wear your mask, be safe. Let's do more of these in 2021. All right, bro?
Yeah. Sounds good. Take care.
Take care. See you, Sean.